Good day everyone, my name is Navneet Anand from Voice Aajkal, local and global. So today we thought why not we get somebody who is an expert with the student visa markets. I think more than 2 decades already in the field and has been the president for AAERI in India. We have Ravi Lochan Singh from Global Reach. Ravi ji, welcome to the show.
Namaskar, how are you?
Perfect, perfect. Now, 2020 has been a very tough year for all of the world.
Right.
And for education industry, it has been a little more on top.
That's correct.
Do you think when would we revive?
I think we are beyond the worst in many ways, Navneet. The way I look at it is that you've been in the industry for a long time. I've been in the industry for long. You said more than 22 decades.
Yes.
We've entered our 3rd decade now. We have 30 years now in this trade. So when I really look at it, is that this is not the first time we are faced with this challenge. We've had such downturns before. However, this time has been around the world. And now this is the best part of it. When you really compare Australia with other destinations and how they have coped with COVID, I'm not talking about student traffic, but how they've coped with COVID, I believe Australia shines. I mean, just we had a cricket match with full capacity in the stadium.
Oh yes, 30,576.
And interesting thing, Navneet, India had a bandi. Most people were glued onto the television. And what they actually saw was mask-free crowds in the stadium. Now that's a huge message. The message is that Australia has contained the virus. It's a safe destination. The country allows people to come into the stadium. This is the first such sporting event post-pandemic in the world.
You know, 100% agreed. Being on the ground without mask and people sitting so close to each other, I think the fear was not there to the extent what it used to be 3 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, there is always some fear that it can come back, and this is what is stopping the student traffic. What Australia has done is largely it's become, you can say, COVID-free. I mean, Australia and New Zealand, but Australia definitely. And now the domestic borders are open between the various states. The big challenge is that the virus, how we can contain it around the world. And this is the reason why our international student trade is affected, because Australia is playing it a bit too cautious. It wants to be really guarded to ensure that they have processes in place before they can let people in.
Do you think it's overcautious?
Well, and now this is the dilemma. If I think of it like an Indian student or Indian parent, I'll say overcautious because, you know, the way things are in India. But if I look at it as an Australian and living in Australia, I think the first duty of the government is to protect its own citizens.
Yes.
So we've got to find a mid-balance somewhere, and I guess the Australian government has found it. What they are actually saying, Navneet, and this is what they have said all throughout, if you really go beyond the just mere optimism, they have always said that after Christmas, and once they have brought the Australians back home, they will start bringing the international students. Now, it will take some time, but it will happen.
You know, when we talk about international students, there are 2 segments where we talk about. One is the international students that went back home and are stuck in their home countries. And second is we're talking about the new inflow of the students whose visas are either already being granted or waiting for applications to be lodged or visa to be processed.
That's correct. I think what they are talking about is the students who are already studying online, who have already paid fees and they've got a visa. Now that's one category. And of course they'll be prioritized over the new students. But what we saw, like there was a small group of students who arrived in Darwin.
Darwin, yes, okay. The pilot project.
First pilot project. And they've now announced the second pilot project for India. And that would be in February. But these are very small pilot projects. These pilot projects are mostly with students who are stranded or I should use the word in middle of the course. Then we've got a pilot project happening from South Australia. Now there's a difference between these 2 pilot projects. The one from South Australia is not on chartered flights. It's on regular flights, but a certain number of students brought for the 3 universities. What happened in Darwin was special flights bringing those students. Now India wasn't included in the Darwin pilot project, nor is India included in the South Australia pilot project. But what we are hearing now is that states like New South Wales are planning to bring 1,000 students per week from January. That's the proposal. Now, 1,000 students per week is a significant jump from 63 who arrived in Darwin.
To start with.
I mean, it's still good. It's still good. And the way I look at it is that in next 6 months, they'll first bring back the earlier lot of students, and then we have some hope for the new students. But if your student has started online, even in July, they go into the old category.
Right, right. I think the vaccine is not too far. The way
That's correct.
the way experiments been done all around the world. I think the first priority for every state head,
Yeah.
including India, Australia, US, Canada, you name it,
Yeah.
is definitely. So how do you see that?
Well, vaccine, we had the news that yesterday first vaccine was administered in United Kingdom. Obviously, they prioritize it to the senior people or the aged people. And of course, if you look at the priority list, by the time the vaccine is given to the students or the younger people, they are in the last priority. First would be the health workers, then the aged and those who are vulnerable. And by the time it comes down. So, I think realistically speaking, Navneet, it will take 6 to maybe even 12 months before our students will be eligible to get the vaccine.
That was my next question. When do you see the actual inflow of the new students who apply for the visa today? We would be able to see them on the grounds.
Okay, now I'm not an astrologer.
Yeah.
I just work with whatever indicators come in front of
That's
me.
right, that's right.
Australia is under tremendous pressure from countries like United Kingdom and Canada.
Yeah.
So of course, Australia wouldn't want to lose its momentum. Yes, it's safe, but students have to arrive to experience how safe it is. So what we have now is a situation where I expect that by July next year, we should see some students who are relatively new. They may start in February and for one semester and start in July from India to arrive.
This is exactly what I normally talk to people. My expectations are in July semester would be seeing some of the new faces in the country, sitting in the classes, face-to-face studies rather than the Zoom classes.
Of course, I mean, in Australia, face-to-face classes have started. Our students are attending classes face-to-face. They are doing the lectures in an online mode or blended mode, but while classes are happening face-to-face, which is the smaller tutorials. Now that message is out in the public. United Kingdom also started accepting Indian students in September. There are groups of students who have traveled to United Kingdom. But what did they face? They faced a second round of lockdown. Most of them have been pretty critical that they have arrived in United Kingdom, but the classes aren't happening. And they are unnecessarily paying the living costs. So of course the numbers, there is a lot of interest for coming back to Australia. It won't be the same as 2019. There will be lesser students next year. There will be less students this year. Last 6 months we've not had new students.
Absolutely.
But in 2021, I believe in the second half of the year, we will see new students. First half, we'll see some of the old students to return. They may not return from India in the first group. They might only come in slightly later in the year, but it will happen. And I get a feeling that Australia will continue to be seen as a safe destination, which is pretty clear.
And a preferred destination.
And preferred destination too. The only issue between all of us is how reliable the vaccine will be. We don't yet know that because the Pfizer vaccine which is being administered is not bought by India. Australia will only get a small consignment by March. The other vaccine, which is the Oxford vaccine, the AstraZeneca, which India is also relying on, that has had some missing parts in their story, but hopefully that will be up and ready for people. And I think largely speaking, world will return towards normalcy by the end of the year.
When I look back, the pictures coming from India and the videos coming from India, I think they have already started feeling Corona has gone out of India already. I think that's one of the reasons that it's spreading to a bigger extent.
True, Navneet. I mean, I think all of us have family and friends in India. And all of us have been touched by family or friends contacting the virus. Some of us have even experienced people passing away in our near and extended families. The situation is now generally people have accepted that it is certain section of the population who are more vulnerable than others. So if we can protect our seniors, the young are almost, they're already going out. India's had state elections. Right now you've got farmers' protests, very social distancing and all that. If you and I look up the news channels from India, now coronavirus is not necessarily the top news anymore. And so whether you like it or not like it, we are in a country where one person is found with a vaccine, the state is shut down. There you got thousands who are infected and it doesn't make to the news.
And probably a lot of them don't go and get themselves tested as well.
Yeah.
They don't get to know that they already was affected and have recovered.
Yeah, we also have news of tests not being authentic. People are getting tests done, not giving the right results. So I don't know what's happening, but reality is that people are living and going on with their life without being so concerned. And even I'll tell you, even our offices are open. Our offices across the subcontinent, all of them are functioning. We have employees who are coming into office. Please understand, even the public transport is functioning. And we do have cases amongst our own employees from time to time. They take a sick leave for corona, come back. And
yes, sick leave for corona.
Absolutely. And no, it's happening. I mean, now that, the fright has gone away.
You're right. The fright has gone away. Yes. On the back of the head, it's always there, but the fright has gone away.
Absolutely. Not at one time in March or April, if somebody got a corona, we had visuals that person was like being, the house was sealed and nobody wanted to touch him or come near him and all that. Now people have got used to it, and I think the recovery rate is very high, and I think that's something which is of comfort. In fact, if you ask me, if there is no vaccine, India will be better off than Australia, because a lot more people will build immunity. While in Australia, because none of us have immunity, we have to remain like an island forever. Every arrival will have to be quarantined for 14-15 days. There's no solution to it. And that's what they talk about, herd immunity. I think in India, lots of people have been exposed to the virus.
I think it is the circumstances and surroundings that we have been born and brought up with, and the spices that we...
Spices.
You talk about turmeric.
Yeah.
Right? So, that boosts the immunity. Tulsi, that boosts the immunity. I think we have already been lived with whole lives there.
I mean, I had a colleague of mine who contacted corona in India, and I asked him how was his experience, and it was pretty severe. He said for 2-3 days it was very bad, but overall it was even better than possibly dengue or one of the other
swine
infections
flu
or something else. He said that it was okay for a couple of days, yes, and then it went away, and maybe they'll
I think they'll call that to be a positivity.
That's it.
That to be a positivity.
Exactly. Now they say, now we got the immunity, we can go out.
We can go out. Taking you back to the international students, you being involved with AAERI very, very closely.
Right.
So I'm 100% sure there'll be a number of agents all around the country would have been in touch with you and asking for the updates. What next? What next? We already discussed what next. But do you really feel it's done earlier than later?
See, I mean, there are many things. I mean, of course, there are lots of agents. The smaller, some other word, agent sounds very dubious. There are many people working in the industry. Yeah, that's right.
Education representatives.
True. Some of them have been more impacted than the others. The bigger companies have been impacted more than the smaller companies.
Probably the overheads.
Overheads, rentals, staff salaries and works, the smaller companies have managed to survive, but now there is a limit to it. First we thought it will last for a couple of months, now it's lasted for 6 or 8 months, it might last for another 6 months. So of course not everybody has very deep pockets to survive that long. That's the first part. So of course many of them are concerned, many of them also work for other destinations. So they've been able to let their students go to Canada or UK, and they had no option, so that revenue can keep flowing. And that's what's happening, especially in North India. Large numbers of students are going to United Kingdom and Canada. And some of them would have chosen Australia otherwise. So that's happening. And that's, as a businessman, I totally relate to it. Now comes the other question, what next for them? The next is they all know that it cannot be a permanent solution. With or without a vaccine, the country will have to come up with a formula. International students are the only travelers who are willing to quarantine for 14, 15 days, other than domestic population which is coming back. I mean, which tourist would want to come here, quarantine for 14 days, and then go and see the Sydney Harbour? I mean, it's as simple as that. So where we are really reaching to, international students will find a way here. The impact on Australian economy is not as much as compared to many other countries. There's a good thing that we are a large island, so we can manage our arrivals into the country, which not many countries have that luxury. We looked at the European countries and the situation they are in. So the way I look at it, Navneet, if we can last the next 6 or 8 months as agents or representatives, Australia will be in demand. The other thing is, universities have realized that they cannot do without the representatives or agents. We don't expect the university members to be traveling into India for the next 12 months. They will not be doing that. And they have to rely on their representatives on the ground. And in fact, even in the last 6 or 8 months, it's the representatives who have carried the Australian flag through and through. There has really been nobody else promoting education in overseas, especially in Australia during this period, because there are no campaigns happening from Australia. Australian government officers are only busy in repatriating people. There's not been much of an activity. Most of the noise around Australia from the universities is very muted. They don't know there has been a lot of churning happening at university campuses. People are losing jobs. All the work about promoting Australia has been done by the Australian education representatives on the ground, and I think that's something which Australia has realized now, that any attempt to get rid of agents and just use online medium to reach a student is not going to work. And I think they really need to work with those who have stuck with them during this period of downturn. And I think that's the message which certainly the universities need to take from us.
I normally say it does not matter how much online things go, but that human interaction, the face-to-face experience will always be there. At the times we were there doing online studies, with my own kids doing the online studies, I could feel that they are wanting to go back to school and have that experience.
Of course, now look at it, there's a fatigue already. I mean, none of our children want to study online forever. They want to meet their friends, they want to meet others. The experience is beyond, for a few days, couple of months, that's fine. But now there is a fatigue. There is a fatigue also in our webinars. How many of these virtual sessions can we really organize? Our students don't want to attend all of them. For a couple of months, as a short gap, perfect. The Zoom is fine.
There was a change. I think people accepted the change,
absolutely,
but that cannot go forever.
It's not permanent. And so these are the huge messages which have gone out. Only about 4 or 5% of our student crowd is able to consider online. Otherwise, they are deferring to the next intake. And I think that's what's happening.
Survival of the fittest, as we say, the overseas offices, whoever have sustained with whatever power they had to sustain. On the other side, if you look at the private providers in Australia, they are also bleeding to a level I could see them. It hurts.
Well, many of them are our friends. They are bleeding, but I tell you one thing, they have been little better than the university sector. You know why? Because the government policies of job keepers did reach the private providers, it didn't reach the universities. The second thing is, the private providers onshore in Australia have been able to recruit students who are moving from one institution to another, and there has been some recruitment. Also in recent times, we are finding a very interesting trend, Navneet. A lot of students who had moved to what they refer to as a TR or a 485 subclass visa, in the hope that they'll move on to a permanent residency thereafter, are not finding too many outlets after the 485. And as I was told, close to 50% of them are returning to student visa once again. And now this is something which most universities, and it's not the universities, the private, because they aren't really able to afford expensive fees. And most of them are using studies as a way to stay on in Australia. And we are already seeing an increase in that traction, close to 50%. It's a very huge number. There are stats now available to this. I was under the impression it will be 10 to 20%, but it's close to 50%. Now 50% of those who went on to TR or 485 are coming back to a student visa. Now where will they go to? They'll go to the private providers. And this is what will keep the private providers floating for the next 6 or 8 months. Because most of them may or may not be even part of the pilot flights which are coming in. We don't know about that, except for certain big ones. But otherwise, it is the onshore movement which will keep them going.
You know, whoever comes to me as well for an advice after nearing his 485 finishing, what do I do? I said, normally go for a course that gets your careers enhanced in one way or the other. And yes, I agree with the private providers. There are a number of courses that are available at the moment, much more than what they used to be at the early stages.
And the immigration has been largely liberal about allowing students to move to work visas from 485 visas to student visas. I'm not a migration agent. I only hear from our students as to what they say. At one time there would be many questions asked. Now there aren't many. We have seen students move on. Now they don't have too many options, frankly. If you ask me, the ideal situation which Australia needs to work on is there needs to be a study, work, settle pathway. Australia needs migrants. It will need even more migrants when it resurrects itself. There are stats available and studies available that Australian migration numbers are going down. They need to boost the migration. Who makes the best migrant? The one who has studied here. They've studied here, they've invested in the local economy, they have also in many ways acquired local skills. And while working part-time, they have embraced local work ethics. Now when you really think of all this, I believe Australia gains from encouraging a study, work, settle pathway. I mean, we can try and say, oh, we are only offering studies, but I think we are fooling ourselves. 80-90% of our students do have an eye on to what to do thereafter.
And nothing wrong with it.
This is legal.
Yes, nothing wrong with it.
And this is much better than applying as on humanitarian or some other ground. This is a skilled manpower, one which can speak English, one which has already invested close to maybe $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, maybe even more. Even more in Australian economy. And they are the ideal kind of workforce. They are young. They've got years to go. And if they can really look at what Canada has done, what a couple of other countries have done, this is our opportunity. If the Australian mindset changes and becomes more accepting towards skilled migration as a way out of this recession, it will work wonders. What is our students coming for? They're coming for skills which local population doesn't have. They're coming for skills in technology, which we need all the time. We need information technology. That too we are bringing in here. They're coming as teachers. We need teachers in our schools. They're coming as nurses. There are many more nurses in requirement. And when are we cutting corners? We are not cutting corners at all. They all have to demonstrate they've got good English. They have to be good health. Most of them are not even married. So when you really think of it in that sense, I think now my talking with all policymakers is Australia needs now to remove a kind of a naqab which I said earlier that, oh, studies and studies alone. I think studies has to link with work and settle pathway for students who are bringing in skills that Australia needs. There is no shame in doing that. And this should be the attraction in the years ahead.
You know, what I feel is they are an asset for the country in the long run. With the aging population growing day by day, we need to have the youth coming and take over the economy and the workforce to get us much better results than what we have as of today. Before I wrap up, any of the message for international students, Australian policymakers and the education providers?
I think Australia remains the safe destination. Probably it's a safer destination than any other in the world. It is also open. Just look at what happened at the cricket match when people could come out and watch a game in a full stadium without masks. And I'm not trying to promote mask-free living, but in New South Wales we don't wear masks unless we are going into a hospital or something like that. And the message out is that Australia is coming back in 2021. It will be the destination of choice, and our colleagues in the industry, let's hold on, let's not lose faith, and Australia has a bright future ahead.
Thank you so much. You know, with the wealth of experience that you have in the industry, it was absolutely privilege and pleasure talking to you.
Thank
Tonight,
you.
आज हमने की रवि लोचन सिंह जी से बातचीत और मैं आपका नवनीत। रवि जी, thank you once again.
Thank you, Navneet.
One-stop answer to your Australian education and visa matters. Gemco Sydney. Dream big, achieve big.
Fiji Times. We with the times.